I said, Paul! Paul was out there. Paul! This was Taylor Walker's living girlfriend. Okay? She gave us the whole poop on Taylor. We met her a month before. He was on drugs, he was drinking, it was everything. So you know what we did? We went on Carl's boat with her and Judy and a few other people. Carl put his arm around her. Took a picture of Taylor Walker and said, we got it from Carl. Okay? Now, I'll tell you something. He didn't win the case, but he felt that.
I love that one.
I just should have said what to him. We were naked.
That was Judy there, right?
I don't want to discuss that. But anyway, by the way, the next meeting in March, Suzanne will not be here. Next meeting is due to popular request, will be in the news in March. So, but Suzanne will not be here. In any event, we put in the mailing this past month, and we've had the good fortune of getting a major donation. Where it came from, or how much the money is really irrelevant. It's going to solve a number of the problems that we have had. It's not going to solve all of them, and if we don't continue to get some flow of money in from the membership, then we're just not going to have the meetings that we have here and exchange the information we do. Because we have some other plans, and I'd like to get some input here. I mentioned this early, and most of the people were not here, so I'll mention it again. There is a very distinct possibility, once we get rid of our lawsuit, to get Arthur Grasek to take a lawsuit on this 14th Amendment issue, where these lawyers come through and they flash the badges. It would give us a major amount of publicity, I believe. And I don't know how much you take it for, how much it would cost, but now that we do have this a little bit of flexibility, I just want to get some input in whether anybody thinks that's a good idea.
Yes.
I mean, is anybody who thinks it's not a good idea? Very simple. When you go, it doesn't happen in federal court, because federal court, everybody's got to go through the metal detector.
Right.
But you go to state court, because they passed a state law, they flash a badge, and they all go through, they go around the metal detector. That is a violation of the 14th Amendment to the Constitution of equal protection under law.
Okay.
And it will not stand up, in my humble opinion, in federal court. Go ahead. Right in your second.
But they're court offices, so they can use that as a...
Irrelevant.
What about another republic?
Irrelevant. You want me to tell you why they'll lose?
Tell me.
Why do they have to go through the metal detectors in federal court? One. Two, and most importantly, according to Newsday statistics, 25% of lawyers cannot pass the bar. And we don't mean the bar exam, we mean O'Shaughnessy's and Schwartz and Flynn and Ginsburg. Okay?
But don't the state court regulates the own state, the state court regulates the own state courts, like the federal. They have the say in that.
Yeah, but excuse me, with all due respect, something I've learned, okay, you must adhere to the U.S. Constitution. That supersedes anything. And the 14th Amendment...
No, not all the time.
With all... Please. Okay. They may find a way to circumvent. I didn't say they won't. But I am telling you right now that the precedent of you having, if you're a lawyer having to go through the metal detector in federal court, combined with the equal protection, they will lose.
That's all right, fine.
They will lose.
Absolutely.
Okay? Ed, you're next. The point I'm trying to make is, I think it will give us a lot of publicity that the media cannot ignore. And so that's the reason, and I think we can do it for a relatively minimal amount of money. Ed?
All right. I had personal dealings with Arthur Grasek. He is a terrific speaker man. In other words, he is terrific when it comes to putting through legal documents. But if he has to stand up and oral argue a case, he should take the Dale Carnegie course, and I told that to him to his face.
I don't care.
Okay, he's good, but he is not good in the courtroom. He is great when it comes to doing paperwork.
He's great. Let me just tell you something. Because I'm pretty... Hey, I told you something. I'm the most cynical guy in the world. Our judge is Judge Platt. He is very tight with Judge Platt. Got that?
Okay.
Okay. He just did what I think is one of the finest papers I've ever seen in response to the summary motion judgment. Harvey Cash will be sitting in a courtroom next to him. Trust me, I ain't gonna let things pass. He will, and he listens.
He picks up.
He listens. He picked up on everything that he was told, and he did it all, and did it better than I even thought he was gonna do it. Okay? He's a little flighty, and he's a little, I mean, I don't wanna go into, I'm just trying to tell you. I'm gonna be there, and Carl is gonna be there, and Julia's gonna be there. So this is what the concern is. What we're saying is, we're trying to zip it into them. Why? Because they're afraid of us. Because when they hear we're in court, they get scared. All right? Now, you people don't know it. You're not court watching, you're not demonstrating, you're not there. So you don't know it.
When do you want again?
When?
In court, when do you have to have? I was there this morning.
No. She's not talking about that. She's talking about our case.
Oh, I'll.
No, we're waiting out for a decision in this, on the summary judgment and the response. The point I'm making in all of this is, we're trying to send them a message, and that's what this is all about. We haven't had the wherewithal before to be able to start sending those messages. That's one part of the equation. This is the second part of the equation. This is penny saver, which is inserted every single week on Sunday into Newsday. We have some ideas on ads to be run in penny saver, and we probably...
So penny saver this week?
This week, I'm sorry. It's called the This Week Penny Saver, I think, from that.
No, it's just this week.
No, it says This Week in Penny Saver Office. Okay? That's what it says. My point to all of this is that there are things that we need to know as fact. And let me explain what I'm talking about. I have sent 2 letters to Raymond Jansen, who's the chairman of the board of Newsday, telling him and advising him that he has a reporter covering the courts whose husband is an attorney, and she's prejudiced. I didn't say she's prejudiced, but I indicated she was prejudiced. In addition to that, when we had our depositions, Julia, myself, and Carl, the only piece of physical evidence presented at the depositions to us, was the article from Newsday regarding me with my picture in there, which was blatant lies. And the reason I mention this is I put Jansen on notice that he could possibly be liable, because that was their evidence. Now, had I done, Carl, etc., done what most people do, and I don't say this in person, and just took it, we would have been up the creek without a paddle. However, the assistant attorney general who was deposing me didn't know something. We started to deluge him with all the evidence that came after that. Letters which I wrote, which Carl wrote, which came from, what the heck is his name at Hall, the executive director at Hall, who responded to a call from somebody at Hall. In other words, there was a stack like this of responses to Robin Topping's article. So the point I'm trying to make is that all of that done what most people do, and I don't say this in person, and just took it, we would have been up the creek without a paddle. However, the assistant attorney general who was deposing me didn't know something. We started to deluge him with all the evidence that came after that. Letters which I wrote, which Carl wrote, which came from, what the heck is his name at Hall, the executive director at Hall, who responded to a call from somebody at Hall. In other words, there was a stack like this of responses to Robin Topping's article. So the point I'm trying to make is that all of that is now entered in evidence. But Newsday became liable because that was the only evidence there. And they may have to defend it. The point that I wanted to get to was the fact that we could put into a penny saver ad that Robin Topping's husband is a lawyer. And that's why Newsday doesn't do the right job on the courts. Because many of you said, we call Newsday, we can't get it, I don't want to hear it, hang on a second, son. In addition to that, when you watch Channel 12, and I don't know how many of you do, half of your advertising is lawyer advertising. And therefore, they had a guy named Rehnquist or something, but he did an expose of lawyers. He hasn't been on since. You could say, why doesn't Channel 12 talk about the corruption in the courts? Why doesn't Channel 12 talk about the judges? They used to, they don't anymore, because half of their advertising. In other words, what I'm saying is, this is a way to zip it into them. I want to get some more ideas, but we've got to talk about facts. It's very important when you put information in print that it be facts, not conjecture, or this one screwed me, or that one did that. We're talking about evidence that will stand up in a court of law. Let me just tell you something. There's a reason why we say at the top, and everybody knows what we're doing, do you have any information of any kind regarding this judge or that lawyer? Let me tell you that will stand up in court. But Your Honor, we got a lot of calls saying this guy's a nice guy. Ask Janet and Sonny. They've been going around giving out things. Do you have any information on Mr. Wall?
Approximately 8,000 cash. And she deposited in her personal account, which she claimed is a business account, which is not a EULA or a client's account, because she keeps the interest. Okay? So I applied to appeal and ask for a jury trial. And when I went to the district court, they said you have to appeal to the, they denied me and it lowered than the district court. And then I went to the appellate term, and they said I didn't attempt to apply for a jury trial, which is false. And so when I appealed again, they said you go back to the district court, let them handle it. And now what they address is not a jury trial, but they addressed me that I still owe this woman $6,614. It
So
went
you're
up.
saying you couldn't get a jury trial?
Right. They didn't say anything. They didn't want
Did you
to.
get the minutes yet, Vicki?
I know, they're still working. I have the tape.
If you think it's just the lawyers and the judges that are scamming you, the stenographers are just as big a crooks. They won't give Vicki the minutes, they won't give Sonny the minutes.
From August.
Howard did a tremendous service.
He said that, Howard. He's all around the floor. He found the law.
We found the law. They've been charging us they've been charging us $4, $8 a page. By law, they're only supposed to charge $1.37 and a half.
By law.
By law. When we pick up the phone and call, they get crazy. In fact, another intimidation tool. If you're in court and you want the minutes, we will buy them for you, and then you pay us. If you want to make the court crazy, have one of us call.
I'm your first customer.
And call. Am I right?
Understand.
Am I right?
I've been doing it and it's been very effective. When I need...
That's correct. Well, Harvey, you should explain to these people that when they order the transcript from the stenographer, they must get a contract signed, approximately when they want the minutes, and the price of the minutes, and approximate length of the minutes. They must get that contract from the stenographer. They won't give it. It's a printed contract. They won't give it.
They won't give it, that's right.
That's it. So get a copy from the state. It's a state contract. We're getting you a copy. We're getting off the copy.
There's a reason why all the stenographers retire multi-millionaires, because they have suckers like you and me to steal from. So if you don't do something about that, they'll keep doing it.
That's why I don't want
Question
cameras
about
in
it,
the court.
which is rather relevant. If a stenographer already transcribed, and he has it done for one party, another party would call in and say, I want a copy.
Right.
do they have the right to charge it all over again?
Absolutely. There's another price for copies.
Or just the price per copy?
No, there is another price for copies.
There's different rules in federal court. He's in federal court. There's different rules for federal court. Remember, federal court taking courts.
Some do it with the, depends with the judge,
With all due respect, I haven't seen a federal court, whether it's Uniondale, Brooklyn, or Westbury, that doesn't take.
They do both in Westbury.
No, they all do both.
Uniondale, tape recorder. It cost me 53.
I haven't gotten an answer yet in terms of expenditures, and what you people feel we need to do, and whether we have the ammunition to hit them, or would you rather leave it to us to get the ammunition, to know what to put, to do it, to start doing these kinds of things, and put them on the defensive. I mean, I know it's going to be, I'm going to need a few of you to contribute flyers, because Carl doesn't part with $1 for air. I mean, you should only know how many conversations I had regarding the bullhorn. So,
I felt you didn't need one.
do you people think that we ought to do something of that nature, the cost of which is not that, I mean, Tom, what can you get this week for in Suffolk and Nassau?
If you're interested in doing any kind of advertising, I could definitely help you with that.
Oh, see that?
Any newspaper in New York, any newspaper throughout the country.
Well, I think that
Let's say that somebody submits half-inch and somebody else submits three-quarter, and you have a mail bin that you're receiving. In my opinion, it's almost like first come, first serve, is that whose tape's going to be pulled out first, and that will you time stamp it? Because if my tape was pulled first, which might be arbitrarily done, then that means that my tape was looked at first, or that my application was looked at first. So that if you don't have a provision for time stamping based on mail, then there's an issue. There's another issue that if people have the capability of dropping it off, and your mail doesn't get there till 1 o'clock in the afternoon, that technically the person who drops it off, if I drop it off with a receptionist, will it get time and date stamped so that I might have a priority? My wife, who doesn't work right now, can give me an advantage compared to other public access producers.
Yes, I have explained to access people that want to mail their applications in, that they are taking a risk in mailing it. As to the people
Will you
I've
do a
seen-
time stamp?
I have a computerized time date stamper that every application will get stamped when it comes out.
Okay, there was just one other point I remember is that in some of the meetings, when we wanted to know when other shows were on, one of the statements were that we could look through the public access records. I've been through the public access records, and they're filed in alphabetical order and not necessarily in a clear and concise alphabetical order, because you'll find, like, let's say the train show could be under T, whereas another show, like, they don't use the word T, but the point is that it's very difficult to go through that whole file to determine what other shows are on at what times if you wanted to know what's on. So,
Well, going forward, that's why we're with the suggestion of putting together a directory of the programs and the producers.
And that's also a reason why all the applications are coming to the access supervisor, so especially in the Suffolk area, because I'm dealing with 3 different systems. I have 3 separate files for each system that will be filed the same exact way. So if you come in, you want to know when your show's on, or if you want to know when American Family Association's on, they will be filed the exact same way, and you can see it. There will also be a schedule available that you can see each show and what time it's on, as well as a list of producers and the show name.
but I've also requested that Cablevision supports public access by including us on their website. I'd like to go on record today requesting that again. I think that when you put it on the website, it shows the whole world that you care about public access, and that there's been no mention in any way of public access on the Cablevision website.
Okay, do we know the name of your mission? Glendora?
Yeah. There's not many people left, but I want you to know about the Rockland meeting. It was a near riot. There were 70 producers, Seminole producers. Back up. And they screamed, they hollered, they shook their fists, they converged on the Cablevision people, and they stormed out. The Hop Hog meeting had only 26 people, and they were very orderly. And the Harrison meeting was last night, and that was 22 people, and they were docile. And there weren't any old line public access producers there. There were just new people, and they were asking questions very meekly, and nobody was there to protest Cablevision's complete blackout of 20 municipalities in Westchester have no public access. There is no system-wide public access in central Westchester, and there's no system-wide editing. Now, here I have May the 1st, 2000 Law Day, United States District Court, Eastern District of Missouri, Lori Galgano, Philip Goldstein, and Glendora plaintiffs versus James L. Dolan, Charles F. Dolan, Robert S. Lemley, Charles Former, Cablevision Systems Corporation, Mark Shukin, Brian McNeil, Maurice Cunningham, Robert Callaghy, Satterley, Stevens, Burke, and Burke, Group 1 defendants. This lawsuit, this complaint against these defendants is 132 pages, and it is being submitted either tomorrow, Friday, or Monday.
Can you add some plaintiffs' names?
What plaintiffs' names would you like to see added?
Zabby.
Okay.
You could add Richard Einhorn today, Glendora. I've held off long enough.
James Burnish. Yes, I can add those names.
Maybe after this airs, you'll get some more.
This will be on public access television.
What do you mean?
This meeting tonight will be on public access television.
Oh, yeah.
So other people might want to contact you. Are you allowed to give out your phone number?
Where?
No, on public, this will be on public access TV. So if you give out your phone number, if there are other people who want to contact you.
914-949-9495.
Thank you.
Brian, excuse me, Brian, you had said that there were 3 producers at that meeting.
I'm sorry, what meeting?
I don't know, you said that you had a...
Oh, yes.
Okay, who were the producers?
I was one. I was also told that I can't videotape. I was also told that they won't commit to anything, and that they were patient enough to listen to
Folks, the Japanese man went to see the eye doctor. And the eye doctor said, "You have cataracts." And the Japanese man says, "Oh, no, I don't. I have a Lincoln." And do you know that Computers are in the Bible. Computers are in the Bible because Eve said to Adam, would you like an apple too? And baseball is in the Bible too. Baseball is also in the Bible because it says in Genesis, in the beginning. In the beginning. And did you hear about the poor little tailor? He wasn't doing well at all. And his rabbi said, you'll have to take the Lord as your partner. And so the tailor did that. He took the Lord as his partner. And my, did he ever flourish. His business grew and grew and grew. And the rabbi saw him on the street, and the tailor was very well dressed. And the rabbi said, did you take the Lord as your partner? And the tailor says, oh, I did. He says, and we have had such a successful business. He says, we have trucks everywhere. We have trucks to the north, we have trucks to the south. Oh, look, there comes one of our trucks right now, Lord and Taylor. Many, many, many things happened this week. Well, folks, Wednesday, Franklin and I came home. We got out the temporary restraining order to show cause on Cablevision to stop the public access kit. We got out the paper to Walker, Second Circuit, to stop already with these leaves to appeal and robbing Glendora's right to appeal. And we got out the paper to Shukin, the Vice President of Local Programming at Cablevision. Then we came home. We didn't get home until 6 o'clock, but I started the telephoning. Our quota is to do something like 50 telephone calls a day. And if we really keep up with them, it'll go down to 30 telephone calls a day. But so many people call. They've had this terrible experience in a court where they've been cheated, where they've been robbed, where they've been lied to, where people have violated the allegiance to the flag of America. And they're so bewildered, and they're so frustrated, and they're so unhappy. And so they call, and I listen to what has happened to them. And of course, I know that they are right. And I know that the goon in the court has been un-American. And then I just tell them what I would do. And so, folks, I tell them what I would do. Number one, I would go to the library, and I would read the laws, and I would find out the name and number of the law that these crooks broke. And then I would read how to file a lawsuit. It's very, very simple, and it better stay simple, because that is the American way to address your government for redress of wrong, and instead of going out and punching somebody. And then I tell them I would sue the judge that did it. That's what the lawsuit is. I would tell them to go to their town, public access, and start up a public access program and tell the story on TV so that the public can see it and know it. And these people think they're getting away with the things that they're doing wrong until they see their name on TV. And then they realize people know they're not getting away with it. And the third thing is to picket them. And then from time to time I'll call them up and see how they are doing. So we made 43 telephone calls Wednesday night. We haven't been able to do any telephoning since because there are so many liars, thieves, and cheats breaking our laws, federal and state, that we have to stop, and we have to write legal papers about them. And the heavy legal papers this week, folks, have been the Texaco, withdrawn. The Texaco Equal Opportunity charade. Bryant let Texaco out of it too easily. Bryant took away the public's right to know. The Roberts versus Texaco case should have gone full course. It should have gone to a jury, and it should have been all laid out before the public. As you know, Bryant very often, now and in the past, covers up things. He even tried to keep the New York Times out. And so the Texaco Equal Opportunity Task Force reports for 1997, 98, and 99 are being scrutinized herein, and notes are being made, and they will go to Bryant and to Bajur, the CEO, and to the task force, and of course to you. And I'm on the third book of that, about halfway through. When the project's completed, I'll show it to you. Another legal paper is the Cablevision proxy statement, which is just one lie and charade after another of these greedy people who take your subscribers' money with all of their increases and put it in their pocket and do not give the shareholders any dividends. And it's 26 pages of rationalization trying to make people think that it's okay. Well, we know it isn't okay. And I have refuted that, and that has taken 40 pages, and I'll have to report that, of course, on the Long Island edition. Another big paper is the lawsuit, Lori Galgano versus James L. Dolan et al., and that's about taking away our public access rights, and that's in the United States Federal Court in District Court in St. Louis, Missouri. The cheap scoundrel lawyer named Robert Callaghy wrote one of his dippy, embarrassing, so defective papers, and it's taken a long time to refute that. Again, that will be a Cablevision report for the Long Island edition. I painted the closet in the front hall of the foyer. We have 3 huge closets just in the foyer alone. And so I painted the last one of those and the biggest one. And it's very nice. The closet even has a little door inside. The lady of this house, apparently a long time ago, wanted it that way. You open the door of the closet, and over here is another door, ceiling to floor, and there are all kinds of shelves. I figure what she was doing was to hang her guest coat on the pipe, and then to put their hats on those shelves. It's very nice, that era that doesn't exist anymore. On Thursday, folks, we went to Harrison to hand in our tapes. Harrison is rinky-dink. Even worse, we found out the night before that Harrison cablecast our program about Giacomo and turned off the audio. Now that is censorship. That is editorial control, and that really is a lawsuit. I don't know what we'll do about that. What do you think we should do about it? But there was no audio, and all of this audio was telling about what a liar and a cheat Giacomo is, and Ishvan Kasari, and Cher, and Rice, and Generoso, and Nikolai, and Tommy Berg, and Edward T. Fry, and Louis P. Barone, and how they cheated right out in broad daylight. They're so used to cheating, they don't know anything else, how to do anything else. They don't know how to do it straight. They don't know how to do it honestly and honorably. And so they, even though everybody's watching them, they stand right there and cheat. This is William Giacomo in the new Port Chester court. And of course that program was going to Port Chester, and was that the reason? The audio was missing. Well, they have to do a make good, and they have to do it in a hurry. And Harrison is so rinky-dink, you go there around 1, 2 o'clock in the afternoon or so, and there's nobody working there. The place is locked up. That's Harrison Cablevision. Thence we went to White Plains. We saw Darrell Jenkins, who does Winbrook Pride and has for a number of years, and was wearing a beautiful royal blue suit. So we picked up our tapes and left tapes, and thence we went over the Tappan Zee Bridge into Rockland to Paul LaPlante to Cablevision at West Nyack. And he does such a good job. He puts all the Hidden Truth tapes together for me to pick up for Lori, and he puts all the Chat with Glendora tapes ready for me to pick up. And they're all right there. And he even carried them out to the car for me because of this badly injured wrist, which is doing very well. I don't know how God can heal anything so complicated and delicate and involved and heal it. I don't even know how God can manufacture such a wonderful piece of machinery that goes this way, that way, and ow, and this way. Then we went back over the Tappan Zee Bridge and up Route 9 to Peekskill, to Barbara Gelman and to Cecilia, and they had all of our tapes, The Hidden Truth and Chat with Glendora, all ready to just pick up, bundle up, and put into the 1993 Lincoln. We went over to the court in Peekskill at 10 minutes to 5. It's a law in the state of New York that the courts have to be open from 9 to 5, and this one, the lazy people, had locked it up early, cheated, and gone home, and thought nobody would catch him. Well, we caught him. That's the Peekskill City Court. Peekskill, Pataki, where Pataki comes from. Thence we went over Route 202 and stopped for our treats and went to Cablevision Yorktown, where we found Susan Dyke very helpful and very well informed, and had a stimulating conversation with her, and she's done very well coming up as an intern and going up the ranks, and now she's been promoted to Cablevision, Connecticut, Norwalk. Saturday, folks, was the 50th reunion of Glendora from college, American International College in Springfield, Mass. It was also Franklin's birthday, and Franklin was a reporter on the Springfield Union newspaper for 10 years, and that seemed about to be the best birthday present to give him. I really would rather have stayed home and finished these odious and burdensome legal papers, standing up for rights, but it was really the best birthday present you could give Franklin. And so we went to Springfield, 125 miles, 2.5 hours, and we had the cookout on the lawn, and we looked around at places in Springfield where we had lived and where we had gone, the beautiful Springfield Library. And then Franklin went to see a friend of his, Harry Hebbins, and it pleased him very much, so it really was the best birthday present he could have had. Then we went on a cruise of the Connecticut River. It is one beautiful river. It is so wide, and it's huge, and there's trees on both sides. So it's truly scenic. It's nice. No industry, trees. And then they had a meeting, and then they had a banquet. And it was very nice to see people and to remember things about each other. But I'll tell you, the funny thing about these 50-year reunions is that everybody is beyond recognition. You don't know who they are. They have changed so. Then we got back at midnight. We left Springfield at 9:31 p.m. and we were back here at midnight. There were about 200 people there. We also went over to see Springfield College, the basketball college, the YMCA college, where basketball was invented. And my, that's a huge, huge campus. And how it has grown since I was at American International College across town. in 1950. Well, folks, here it is. We just came back from printing it. Let me take down the, whatchamacallit, Glendora. Lifts the veil on the notice of annual meeting, June the 6th, 2000, which is D-Day, and the proxy statement of Cablevision. And this is Glendora Opus 410. And it calls itself this year Cablevision Systems Corporation. That's what the name is this year. Last year they had 2 or 3 different names. And it says you are cordially, can you imagine that? Cordially invited to attend our annual meeting of stockholders at 10 a.m. on June the 6th, 2000 at our corporate headquarters building at 1111 Stewart Avenue, Bethpage, New York. They left out the zip code. It's 11714. And Glendora notes that this building is 33% tax abatement. Town of Oyster Bay gave them something like $33 million tax abatement. Well, they need it. When you look at their poor salaries, which are only a couple of $1 million a year, they really have to have a tax abatement. And it says, in addition to the matters described in the attached proxy statement, we will report on our company's activities during 1999. I would ask, how many of the company's activities, and how many will they not report on? You will have an opportunity to ask questions and to meet your directors and executives. Will they stay around long enough after the meeting for us to ask them questions? The directors go. They always sit next to the exit sign. And I asked Mr. Charles Dolan, will you be there this year? Last year, Mr. Charles Dolan was absent from the annual meeting, and that's against the rules. So we'll see if Mr. Charles Dolan is there now. Now, I look forward to seeing you, says Charles Dolan, at the meeting. Your vote is important to us. And Glendora says, what difference does it make? Because let me read you this, folks. Class B shares have 10 votes per share and are entitled to elect 75% of the board of directors. Our chairman, Charles F. Dolan, and trusts for the benefit of members of his family, together own Class B shares, having the power to elect the 9 Class B directors, to approve Proposal 2, and to reject Proposal 3. Well, what do we have left to vote on? He can vote the whole thing. So Glendora says, what difference does it make in consideration of what page 1, infra, says, that Charles Dolan has all the power? Now I'd like to have you see the signature, the flourish of a billionaire, a man whom you made a billionaire. Do you see it? That's his signature. Glendora has said all along that this is a family company. Masquerading as a quote-unquote public company. And it has been a charade for all of these years. If it is a public company, why can't shareholders see the books, records, and minutes? They want the public's money, Cablevision, the Dolans, want the public's money and won't give the public anything in return for the money. Further, their attempts at being a public quote-unquote company are amateur. They really put out an amateur annual report and an amateur proxy statement. Now, notice of annual meeting of stockholders of Cablevision Systems Corporation is repeated herein, and the purposes are to elect directors and to elect or ratify the appointment of independent accountants. Well, that would be KMPG. Now, no accountant company is going to be independent because every accountant company has to depend upon the people they are accounting for. They are doing the accounting for Cablevision, and if they don't put down what Cablevision wants them to put down, then they are not going to get an appointment. And that appointment is not going to be ratified, is it? So you see, that's a lie in and of itself. Independent accountant. The vote on the shareholder proposals set out in the proxy statement, if it is properly introduced at the meeting. They're going to try to get rid of that, of course. That's Cablevision's way. They tried to do that with me hundreds of times. And we recommend that you vote yes for this. They are asking for people independent of Cablevision to be on the board of directors. What we need on the board of directors is fewer Dolans and people who are independent. Now, who made this proposal? The College Fund, and I'll maybe have a chance to read it to you. Your vote is important. We urge you to vote as soon as possible by telephone, internet, or mail. Glendora says, why? Charles F. Dolan has all the power. Page 1 states so. Is that so, Katie Cat? Katie Cat, I don't see you in the picture. People like to see you on TV. And this is signed by Robert S. Lemley, and he refuses to show a shareholder, moi, the books, records, and minutes. And it is a law. My question is, why, Mr. Lemley? And Glendora dates, his date is May 15th, 2000. The proxy statement doesn't come out until 2 weeks before the annual meeting. It hardly gives you time to scrutinize it. And Glendora's comments are dated May the 31st, 2000. And here, folks, is a table of contents. How many weeks do you want to spend on this proxy statement? You're certainly going to stay tuned to hear the salaries, how much money Charles F. Dolan makes, or at least they say he makes. It's probably a lot more than that. Table of contents. General information, Proposal 1, election of directors. Director compensation. That's something for you to hear. Board committees. And Glendora wants to go to the next board meeting. Justify the greed for the director's compensation. And Glendora wants a sworn statement. Proposal 2, ratification of appointment of independent accountants. And Glendora recommends a vote of yes for Proposal 3, shareholder proposal regarding independent directors. I want you to buy 1 share of stock in Cablevision so you can go to the annual meeting and so you can get this proxy statement and so you can see the hoax that's going on there. Glendora recommends a vote of yes, and of course the board recommends a vote of no on the shareholder proposal regarding independent directors. Executive compensation, you want me to read you that? Compensation committee report. The executive compensation tables. And I say their greed is written all over their faces. Why won't they show a shareholder the books, records, and minutes? What crime are they covering up? We are now on to their page 1. Do you like it, Katie? Go over here, Katie, where people can see you. You're purring. That means you want me to feed you. So just let me read this to you again, that our chairman, Charles F. Dolan, and trusts for the benefit of members of the Dolan family together own Class B shares having the power to elect the 9 Class B directors, to approve Proposal 2 and to reject Proposal 3. So, is this a public company? I wouldn't say so. I would say it's a family company. Now, how to vote. We recommend you vote by proxy, even if you plan to attend the meeting. You can always change your vote at the meeting, Katie. Yeah. Over here, Katie. How the proxies work. Now, the proxy card print is illegal. It's too small. There are legal specifications on how small print can be. And the print on the proxy card is too small. It is illegal. Solicitation. The company pays to solicit the votes for the directors they want, and to solicit votes for the proposals they want passed. I say that's wrong. It should come out of the pockets of Charles Dolan and James Dolan and his family, and it should come out of the pockets of the board of directors. The shareholders should not have to pay the expense of soliciting proxies for these people. Revoking a proxy. You can go to the meeting, and, but it says here you can't revoke a proxy other than the way that you did it, so if you send it in by mail, you should revoke it by mail. Confidential voting. Independent inspectors count the votes. Your individual vote is kept confidential, including those delivered by telephone or internet from us, unless special circumstances exist. For example, a copy of your proxy card will be sent to us if you write comments on the card. Well, Glendora always does. It's kind of suspect, this confidentiality of voting. Don't you think? We are on page 2. Quorum. In order to carry on the business of the meeting, we must have a quorum. This means that at least a majority of the outstanding shares eligible to vote must be represented at the meeting, either by proxy or in person. So that means that only Charles Dolan has to show up at the meeting, right? He has the quorum. Charles F. Dolan alone is a quorum. The votes needed. The candidates for election as Class A directors receiving the most votes from holders of Class A stock will be elected to fill the seats for Class A directors on the board. 4 seats. The candidates for election as Class B directors receiving the most votes from holders of Class B stock will be elected to fill the seats for Class B directors on the board. And approval of Proposal 2 requires the favorable vote of a majority of the votes cast. Approval of Proposal 3 requires the favorable vote of a majority of the votes cast. Abstentions and broker non-votes count for a quorum purposes. They will not affect Proposal 1, Proposal 2, or Proposal 3. Broker non-votes occur when a broker returns a proxy but does not have authority to vote on a particular proposal. So if you buy stock, folks, make sure that you do it, that you own the stock. Make sure that you own the stock certificate. Make sure that the stock certificate is sent to you. Don't let it be held by a broker. And I say this is all poseur. Now, Charles F. Dolan does the electing. Proposal 1, election of directors. The board has nominated the director candidates named below. Of the 13 nominees for director, 9 are to be elected by the Class B stockholders and 4 are to be elected by the Class A stockholders. I'm a Class A stockholder. All Cablevision directors are elected for one-year terms. Give them credit for that. Personal information on each of our nominees is given below, but that is very skimpy. There's not enough information there for you to decide whether the person qualifies as a director of this company. All the nominees currently serve as Cablevision directors. Each current director was elected by the stockholders at the last annual meeting, except for Mr. Somers. Now, he's the AT&T substitute, since Leo Hendry and John C. Malone are out on their gluteus maximus because they lost their company to AT&T. So Mr. Somers is the token for AT&T. And so far as I know, there's only one woman on the board, and so far as I know, there are no blacks. In fact, there are no blacks in higher management at Cablevision. Now, Glendora says it's insufficient information that you give about the directors. Let shareholders interview each director individually and see each director's records. This is a sham. Okay. How are we doing, Katie, on the time? You want this to be over so you will be fed. Okay. What's over there was Technical High School. Looks kind of abandoned. And this was an insurance company up here. What was that?
Well, this was the farm people.
Pretty soon we'll be going by Commerce High School.
Springfield Technical.
And the Springfield Armory.
Springfield Community Technical School.
Is this part of the Armory too?
Yes.
Oh, over here?
St. James. Yes,
What's this, a Masonic temple?
Baptist Church right there. Byron's? Looks like it.
Byron's funeral home, where I last saw my father. Did we go by Friendly's?
No, I
Blake brothers started it right after the war. They started it before the war. Winchester Square, the old Indian motorcycle plant.
Abraham Road. Hope Church.
Oh, where's Hope Church? Right there. Hope Church. Wilbraham Road, Winchester Square.
And in Lee Hall.
The time is 3 minutes to noon. Of the Indian motorcycle plant.
No, I think this was it, I think.
We've gone by Ameren Hall, you know. Okay?
We haven't gone by Lee Hall.
Yeah, Lee Hall is off of that street. So you have to go up here and turn around and come down Wilbraham Road. What?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm short of
It's noon. On June 3rd, Franklin's birthday. Here's a house that's being wrecked. This is Wilbraham Road. Homer School. Homer Elementary School. This is the back of Lee Hall. There is Ameren Hall. And the time is what?
11 o'clock.
And the mileage is what?
128.
What's the matter with your leg? What happened to it? You had a series of falls? When?
Several years ago.
What year specifically?
1999.
My wife is coming with me, but she's got a pinched nerve.
Oh.
Going down her neck, and we went out last night. She said, I don't think we're going to make it.
Yeah.
So, it rained hard for at least a half hour.
Oh.
Someone donated, and they put their name on it.
Oh, what, a center, a student center?
Yeah. Schwartz, C-H-W-A-R-T-Z.
And what's this building straight ahead of us with all the ivy?
I don't know. Remember my roommate, Herb Schwartz, don't you? 99. And there was about 25 people there. Wasn't bad.
What kind of a thing?
What's that thing?
What kind of a thing did you have?
we had a buffet supper, and we all told stories about his name's on. I think it's a Polish name, Sokolowski or something.
Oh, is that Sokolowski?
Yeah, we came by when we
Yeah.
came down state.
Sokolowski is the helicopter guy, isn't he?
Would the owner please call Paul Quinn, 914-949-9495. We saw your ad in the Yellow Pages and thought
Came here last Sunday. I asked for $20 worth of gas. I gave Jimmy the $20 bill. It was a new 20. And he put $20 worth in. He gave me a receipt. I parked the car over there. And then Jimmy came and he said he didn't have any $20 from me. I knew that I'd given him $20. We looked around the car, the front of the car here, and we looked on the ground. There was no $20. And I didn't like that very much. And so he says, well, I'll tell you what I'll do. He says, when the computer tallies up tonight, I'll see if I'm $20 over or $20 short. And then I'll tell you next Sunday. He says, I know that you come in here every Sunday. He says, I know that you come in here every Sunday and do your laundry. Here we do before church. And and it is true, we do. And that's when I usually fill both cars with gasoline. And so this Sunday I came in and he said he tallied up $6 short. And he said if it hadn't been for my 20, it would have been $26 short. I forgot to include that I gave him another $20. In other words, I paid $40 for a few gallons of gas. This is already rip-off month for gasoline. They say the cheapest price you can get is $1.73 today. And so there's a thief, another thief, the thief of the week. And so I did not get my $20 back. So I am short $20. And where is this? This is on Gramerton Avenue, just north of Lincoln. Don't mistake it with a mobile station. It's across the corner from the mobile station. It's the gasoline station with the laundromat attached. And this is in Mount Vernon, and the date is June the 11th, 2000, Anno Domini. 2 weeks ago, before this, I came into the laundromat and there was a $20 bill on the floor. So I picked it up and I went around and asked the people if they had lost a $20 bill. And they looked in their wallets and they checked and they didn't. So we took that $20 to the church and we put it into the collection. There goes a Lincoln taxi cab. Fade out.
This is my story. This
Tore the wall all apart.
This is my song. Praising my Savior.
We found out that the leak was the refrigerator. On June 12, 2000. It's such a nice refrigerator.
Yeah, we have our
But if there's been changes in the landscape out there, it means that the role of municipal government, the role of all governments, the role of the country is a monopoly. One provider providing one type of service to doesn't have the kind of flexibility that they had before, because they're dealing on behalf of a large national corporation, perhaps, and in some cases multinational corporation, that has certain imperatives in order to grow that business. The other approach, the other thing is that sometimes the way this process works, it's almost something called the formal process and there's something called the informal process. And which one you use is in some ways a tactical or a strategic decision that we can talk about in terms of how this process ensues. But at least initially, the companies are always almost uniform. It may be that if things drag on too long and if the answers that are not forthcoming that you have a right to have are not forthcoming, that it may be to your advantage to invoke the formal process to get things moving and to get things. You need to look at the past performance of the company under the current contract. Right? Now, those of you that are going through transfers, right, say that they don't need this and this is the reason why they don't need it or why we don't really need to do it. Well, I'll get to you in a second. Okay. The essential point here, though, is that you need to know that in this process. You need to know precisely what it is that's special about your community, precisely what it is about your community that how the community would use these particular services, what things that you want in this particular community. And you need to have that well researched. This is one way of putting it. So that when you go into this process, it's less likely it's going to ever get to that quote-unquote federal, evidence gathering process, because the company's going to know. They've got their act together. They know the way the lay of the land is here. They're not asking for anything that we haven't done elsewhere. We're going to have a darn hard time trying to argue to anybody, to any court anywhere, that we can't do this here and we're doing it somewhere. And on top of that, it's required, so that's part of the due process requirement. Then the final agreement is ratified, usually in the form of a resolution by the local government. It's signed by the chief executive officer of the local government unit. And then the company sends it to the Public Service Commission for certification that it meets federal and state rules and regulations. I think I've said pretty freely, this is not an area that the state has regulations on. Here are your options. Here's what the law, at least at the federal level, tells you, all right? Here is the areas that are gray areas. CNN, that can't go in the contract. They have the right to market services as they see fit. They have the right to put them on the channels they want, talking about actual services. The good news about negotiating for capabilities is this. The capability exists in the system, and there's an expense that goes in putting that capability into the facilities and equipment that you negotiate for. Pretty good bet that very shortly thereafter they'll be marketing a service based on that capability, because it makes no sense to spend that money if you're not going to market a service as schools are concerned. Most of these cable companies are required under agreements with the FCC, rate agreements with the FCC, to provide free cable modem service to schools. So you want to make sure that they're held to that, but there also may be other things that you want to do with respect to service to schools and public buildings. One above that, obviously, is probably the most important to you in terms of housekeeping and local regulation of streets, and that's the safe orderly use of your streets and rights of way, making sure that they comply, just as anyone else would have to comply with laws and regulations that deal with this afternoon. But it bears saying here, because that's an important aspect of the local franchising authority. The franchise fee. I have a handout because I found that that's often a big question. I will it's not in your packet, but I will make that available. I have a file of them here, and I'll make sure I hand them out at the end of the session. A lot of questions with respect to franchise fee. What's allowed? There are a lot of tricks being done with franchise fees. What is defined as gross revenues, what you would think would be defined as gross revenues is actually, to anyone who really understands the English language, looks like a definition of net revenues. There are rights under the law with respect to the franchise fee. I mean, want to say something about public access?
Yeah, just something about
It's
it.
a good thing for communities. I didn't mean that, it's funny, I meant that's true. Accountability for local governments to be involved here to some extent, because the trend may be in the future for the federal and state governments to get out of that as they perceive competition taking over certain tasks that were once done by regulation in the consumer protection matter. You should also know that federal law gives local governments the right to pass consumer protection provisions independent of the franchise. You just pass them as local laws if you wish. And of course the term of the franchise, which is very, another thing that we could debate for hours. But I would suggest to you from a strategy standpoint that terms should be discussed last, all the time. I got no time of saying hi to me, but I think he's telling me 5 minutes. The term is probably the most important aspect of your agreement. All along, they gave a 3-year contract. So okay, we'll give you a 3-year contract. We're going to come back and discuss this when it's more when this settles out a little bit more and you get an idea. And what's happened over those 3 years is suggest to you from a strategy standpoint that terms should be discussed last, all the time. I got no time of saying hi to me, but I think he's telling me 5 minutes. The term is probably the most important aspect of your agreement. All along, they gave a 3-year contract. So okay, we'll give you a 3-year contract. We're going to come back and discuss this when it's more when this settles out a little bit more and you get an idea. And what's happened over those 3 years is that a lot of companies pay franchise fees, including Cablevision and cable modem service. Cablevision pays it in New York City. So far, they refuse to pay it everywhere else, but they pay it in New York City, which does something about the clout New York City has that maybe someone else wish we had. The fact of the matter is that Time Warner pays it, Media One has paid it. There's a lot of companies out there that are paying that consider this a cable service. So, the franchise that's passed by the local government as an ordinance. You still require in this state, the law requires that cable television be regulated by cable franchise agreements. There's a limitation on this, and you get to get some refreshment into this. I want to leave you with 3 other things to remember about this, and this is something that sometimes these are a little bit subtle, but they need to be said. The franchise renewal process, the renewal process is not a competitive bid situation. You're not in a situation where you're deciding, we want this company that we've had, or we want this, try to entice this other company to come in. It's not an either-or proposition. The way the law is set up is the company, in 99.9% of the cases, has a federal presumption of renewal. It's a substantial right that they have. Okay? You can get another cable company any time, at least legally, maybe practically. It's always very chilling. I can say this from the state, we're here to help you. But at least it's early in the morning, you won't have nightmares if I say it this early. But we've been doing this for a number of years. Obviously, maybe I say too long, but for certainly in my own case, for 20 years, some of you, I know quite well, and it's always, at least for me, enjoyable to get together with you and work on these particular issues. Use us, we're a resource, all right, and we don't cost you a dime, all right. So, at least avail yourself of our services. If you want to go beyond that, there's other things that you think you need to do.
At the conference.
I think it's a good conference, particularly since the town of Clarkston is looking to renew our Cablevision franchise within the next 3 years. In fact, we've already been notified by them of their interest. So this is a very apropos and timely conference for us because these issues are right on the table right now.
Well, that's good. Tell us, folks, your name.
Charles Holt, or Clarkstown Supervisor.
Clarkstown Supervisor. Oh, thank you, Charles.
Okay.
Yeah, tell us what you think of it, Mr. Russo.
Well, so far I think it's going well. I just hope we talk more about the public access part of the PEG.
Yeah, we got to figure that out, right?
Other than that, these people have been very helpful us over the years, and we're happy about that, especially Steve Shea and John.
Yeah, you were in Scarsdale, right?
At one point, yeah.
And now you're in Rye. Yeah, that's good.
Compliment the State Public Service Commission for having it. It's helpful to municipal officials, especially on renewal of franchise.
And what's coming up in New Rochelle, Chuck?
Well, we're hopefully going to have a public access studio constructed by the end of this year, and I imagine in the next 2 years we'll begin renewing the franchise with cable, which will be kind of busy.
Oh, it's renewal?
Yes, well, it expires in 2005.
Chuck, why was New Rochelle so enlightened and was able to do the public access when 20 municipalities didn't? New Rochelle, Pelham, and Pelham Manor. What did they have that the rest of us didn't have?
I don't know. I don't know. What are you referring to, Mark?
Well, you still carry a chat with Glendora.
We carry 14, 15, and 16, right?
Yeah. And then the other municipalities don't.
I don't know the reason for that. Essentially, we are a little behind what we do with the public.
You're ahead.
Well,
No, you're ahead.
But we still work with Cablevision to put what's on the public access channel on. We hope to be able to, when our studio's built, on our own.
What do you think of it? Yes.
Very interesting.
You say it's very interesting? A lot of municipal people here.
Seems to be quite informative.
You're so assiduous. You take notes and you ask questions.
Well, that's what I'm here for, to ask questions and get answers.
What's your name?
Tom Nosworthy, Supervisor, Town of Waukegan, Orange County.
Oh, good for you.
Near Middletown, Port Jervis.
Yes, good.
West of West Point.
Yeah, oh.
17 and 84 intersection.
Oh, good.
Home of the Galleria.
It's nice?
Very nice.
What do you think of the conference? Nice?
Excellent.
Yeah. What do you think of the
I think
conference?
it's a great turnout.
All right.
A lot of interest in municipal officials.
Steve's going to review with us today where we are in the regulatory arena, where we are in
Tom,
the
not
judicial
Isabella.
arena with various issues, and how some of those issues impact municipalities here in New York State. And we'll be reviewing consumer issues and what we do at the PSC with respect to establishing standards that you folks follow within your franchise and you folks deal with at the local level and trying to keep.
Good morning once again. It's a privilege for me to actually speak about this subject because I have been around cable regulation since the early 70s. And it's something that has changed dramatically over the years. And it's important for us as municipal officials and also as state regulators to understand where cable came from and where we're going and how the industry is evolving from a regulatory standpoint. One note on my presentation, I'm not going to focus on PEG access in the legal arena in this part of the seminar. We've devoted a separate hour to that this afternoon. We're going to talk about PEG access and we'll cover some of the legal cases that have been raised in the last few years. We'll also have franchising authority in New York State, which preceded, of course, even the creation of the State Commission on Cable Television. I want to start in 1984 when the federal government became involved in regulation. In 1984, they adopted the Cable Communications Policy Act. At that time, there was, in Washington, Congress was convinced that there was an alphabet soup of technologies that were ready, willing, and able to compete with the cable television industry. And as you may recall, Tom Wheeler, who was the president of the National Cable Association, was very effective at lobbying Congress. And in '84, this act was passed, which did these essential things, which still exist today in a large part. They established the regulatory framework for how cable television was defined at the national level. It established the renewal process,
which gave cable companies the presumption of renewal. John spoke about all the issues related to renewal, but the genesis of that was 1984, when the federal government said, cable operator, unless you've screwed up, you really have, or you can't meet the future needs of the cable of your community, you're going to get a franchise renewal. It also enabled the municipal government to require, as a condition of renewal, 5% franchise fee. That was an essential part that really didn't exist before. You could negotiate for it. At this point in time, if anybody tells you you're not entitled to it, we believe they're mistaken. As a condition of renewal, you can require 5% franchise fee. It also established for the first time PEG, public educational governmental access. It didn't set requirements, but it said franchising authorities had the ability to require PEG access as a condition of renewal, as long as you establish needs. It removed rate regulation, which many of you remember was a heady time for the cable industry. They used to have to come to every municipal government and negotiate quarter and 50-cent increases. After 1986, which was the period it was phased in, the cable industry was free in almost every area to raise rates at their discretion. They've also established leased access, and that for the first time, the cable industry, if they had a channel capacity of a certain size, they had to set aside a certain amount of that capacity or make it available for lease for unaffiliated users. And that was established in the 1992 rules, and that's created quite a controversy recently in New York. The Telecommunications Act of 1996, it was really a watershed mark for the communications industry, because all barriers to entry into each other's business was changed. One could say forever, but it was changed, and telephone companies that couldn't get into, long-distance companies that couldn't get into the local business, and local companies that couldn't get into long distance could now do that. They could also get into cable television, as long as that compensation was non-discriminatory and competitively neutral. There are several cases that have been adjudicated in this manner. We'll get to those in a few minutes. Prior to 1996, there had never, this did not exist. It was a new term that was established in the 1996 Act, and basically what it attempted to do was establish a method of competition where the provider of open video systems had to provide at least a third of their capacity for non-affiliated providers. But it also attempted to do away with whatever local franchising system. You didn't need a local franchise to provide open video. You still had, according to FCC rules, you still needed to go to your municipal officials and negotiate certain things. But at first blush, the rules said you didn't need a local franchise, and also it took only 10 days to get a certificate from the FCC. So it was government at its best, speed and action, but there were some problems with those rules, which we'll get to in a minute, that were overturned by a case in Glendora. As you may be aware, the 1996 Cable Act went back again to the deregulatory mode with regard to rate regulation. On the cable programming service tier, which is that second tier of service that most everybody takes, over 90% of the people take it, that's deregulated, and it was deregulated a little over a year ago. So the cable industry may only be regulated on the basic mode with regard to rate regulation. On the cable programming service tier, which is that second tier of service that most everybody takes, over 90% of the people take it, that's deregulated, and it was deregulated a little over a year ago. So the cable industry may only be regulated on the basic rates, and very few people take that level of service alone. And the basic rates are either regulated by you as the franchising authority or by the state because it's been delegated to us. And the state review of local basic rates is really on a more generic ad hoc basis. We have 1,000 communities that I think we're responsible, approximately 1,000 that we regulate. And we do it by looking, by reviewing those rates, but not in as detailed a way as we might have done under the 1992. City of Dallas versus the FCC. I've mentioned the open video decision before, where franchising was not required. The important concept here is that municipalities do not derive franchise authority from federal law. You get it under state law. So while the federal law said that their the franchising requirements were not required under OVS, if it is required under state law, and I think we can make a pretty strong case that state law requires, or certainly gives you the authority to require a franchise if you so choose. You can do that for an OVS provider. I'm not sure any of you have yet been approached by OVS providers, but there is a company that has recently sent letters to many communities in New York State and has gone for an OVS certificate. It's called American Broadband, that may be approaching your community soon. And it's important for you to realize that you have the ability to require a franchise, you have the ability to require a franchise fee, you have the ability to require PEG access standards in that franchise. What you don't have the ability to do is establish an institutional network. At this point in time, I don't know if it was Southwestern or Southern Bell, Southwestern Bell, they didn't have to get a cable franchise in order to offer the service because they had met some other technicalities were not met in terms of the type of cable system that was provided. So this is important for you if an open video, if somebody wants to lease lines and serve private buildings, and they're not technically using the right-of-way if they're not the one who has constructed the system in the right-of-way. That was what the finding from had established a safe harbor hour for the viewing of sexually explicit material that might have been indecent, certainly not obscene programming, which is prohibited speech under the Constitution. But the decision by the Supreme Court was that the government, in establishing this safe harbor hour, requiring a cable operator to trap out all the adult programming and or show it totally at night, was a violation of the free speech rights of Playboy or the cable operator. So what happened was that adult programming is no longer restricted to overnight hours. Free traps remain available. That's something that's very important for municipal officials to be aware of if you get complaints from your constituents that if they don't like programming because it's bleeding, and you can see it, even though it's scrambled, you can see it, a free trap is available. So it's a less restrictive means of, the government has a less restrictive means of curtailing speech in this case than saying you have to have the speech at a certain hour. And that was the decision in this case. So we may see a change where adult programming is shown all the time with it just being scrambled. But had begun constructing in a lease arrangement with Edison Telephone, I think it was, in Dearborn, Michigan, and they began constructing a system, and they had worked out an agreement with the city of Dearborn back in 1994 to pay a certain amount of money and a franchise fee. The Telecommunications Act was passed, and TCG said, wait a minute, we don't have to pay any money now. And they gave various reasons, like Ameritech wasn't paying any money, the existing regional bell operating company. And there was a lawsuit over this because the community believed that they had to pay a fee and they had to continue to pay a fee. The court reached a decision in this case that basically, I think, favored the municipal government. They said that compensation and use of the public right-of-way could require that a fee be paid, even though that the incumbent didn't have to pay a fee. There could be differences, but you have to establish what the differences were. You have to show why it would be non-discriminatory, but that there was an avenue available to municipal governments. But the linchpin is what happens under state law. There's a state law issue that has yet to be resolved, and that has also been unresolved in New York State at this point in time, is whether municipal governments are entitled to compensation for use of the public right-of-way above what those costs are. It was good and bad for municipal governments. It was overturned. The initial decision by the district court basically restricted what a municipal government could do with regard to management of the public rights-of-way. Clearly made it. It even went as far as to list all the specific items that could be managed by the municipal government, what they could say.
The federal and state government requirements. And if you need to ask a question as I'm going along, please feel free to do so. There's a few areas that we're going to discuss, about 5 areas. The first one is going to be consumer protections. We're going to talk about customer service standards. We're going to discuss briefly some municipal suggestions regarding consumer matters. A primary thing, where to find information, and how to contact the PSC. Very briefly, the 92 Act was called the Consumer Protection and Competition Act of 92, and it did focus on some consumer issues. It established customer service standards, rules on home wiring, equipment compatibility, anti-buy-throughs, and retransmission consent rules. Now, we'll get into those. You don't have to memorize them or anything. And then again, the 96 Act that was just referred to, as far as consumers are concerned, it did deregulate expanded cable rates. It included things for a requirement that every cable company have a complaint process, which we've already had in New York, V-chip for blocking programming, notices if there's rate changes, and requirements dealing with closed captioning programming. On the in the consumer protection areas, we have extensive billing practice requirements, and I'll just briefly go over a couple of them. Some of them are probably you don't even realize anymore because they're so commonplace. Lately, have you been experiencing any of that? Still some. Well, I thought some of the technical changes in the systems helped that, but I guess not. But our weather's been pretty severe. Credits for outages is something that always concerns municipal officials and customers alike. You are entitled to credits for an outage that's 4 continuous hours or more on all your channels.
They've come out, they did some technical analysis, and they say that they find either nothing wrong, or they fixed the problem, or this is the best that we can do, and you're still unsatisfied. Who do you call? Here's the answer. You should contact your local franchising authority, which is the local city, county, or other government organization that regulates your cable television service. The FCC's technical rules are generally enforced by the local franchising authorities, who are the most likely to be familiar with the local system operation and plan. So in other words, the FCC establishes the technical rules and regulations for signal quality standards. However, they've empowered you folks as the local municipal officials and us as the state officials with enforcing them. Power, telephone, cable TV. Of these, only 2 are currently considered communications facilities, power and telephone. Although I have heard of the power companies adding some communications facilities of their own. Of the 2 most dominant wired communication providers, we must understand some of the basic fundamentals of their operation. Just what is a cable TV system? Cable television system is made up of high bandwidth cables, I promise I won't get too technical speak, and communications apparatus. The cable television system is unique in that it uses the RF frequency spectrum from 5 to 750 megahertz and confines its use within a closed network system. Cable TV actually has all the bandwidth that is used for many over-the-air services, such as broadcast, television service, FM. You're on the internet, you can't receive telephone calls. Well, how do they differ? One pair of wires for one service, for the most part carrying one service, or for one user, for the most part carrying one service. Cable television system is one communication system with the possibility of hundreds, if not thousands, of multiplex services serving hundreds, if not thousands, depending upon the system design layout. So where do we go from here?
Whether 72 is, I mean, it seems to me that that typically people are getting bad signal in 72 because it seems to degrade first when the signal gets weak or something. Is that something that you could evaluate and aggressively monitor?
We can perform technical testing on all. We perform technical testing on all the signals available.
Well, I mean, it would seem like it varies from home to home to home.
Yes.
I mean, the further away they are from wherever the signal is strong, the more likely they are to have this problem. And so, you know, you could show that they're emitting a good signal from someplace, but by the time it gets to 2/3 of the users, it's got corduroy.
Yes, we can evaluate that.
Do you think that it would be likely that they couldn't consistently deliver the same quality signal in the 70s as in the teens?
They should be able to maintain signal quality throughout the entire band. I understand where you would run into that problem, moving the access channels from the lower or the mid-band to the upper end of the spectrum. So because of the signal loss increases as the drop length increases, distortion rates increase in that upper end, and the system just has to be a little bit more proactive in maintaining and making sure that the parameters are a lot tighter. And that's not impossible.
Well, but I mean, if we were going to go into a period of very rigorous assessment of that, basically say to them, either move it back, or we're going to go through 6 months of really closely inspecting this, how would you suggest that we go about really thoroughly inspecting whether they're getting a good signal out of 72?
Just continued monitoring of the signal and interaction and communication with them.
How would we do that, and how could we involve you in it?
Well, we can come out and do an analysis, okay? And then from there, we'll give our analysis of the system and how it's performing, and give them recommendations or tell them what they should be doing to maintain or improve the signal quality standards.
I think so.
And then at your level, you can interact with the cable operator and let them know when you're starting to see this problem, you let them know that you are having difficulties.
Let me answer because you have two points. One, the cable operator, in the technical specifications of their systems, if it's operating as it should be, you should have equal and uniform clarity and reception quality, and they should be able to measure signal strength, you know, the same from channel 2 out through channel 99 or 106 or however many you're going to get to. So I mean, if the system's operated as it should be, it doesn't matter what channel the signal is delivered on. It should be just as good on channel 2 as channel 15, 36, 99, whatever. Secondly, cable operators today are finding that they do have to operate their systems under much more stringent requirements than what they've placed on themselves in the past. As they introduce high-speed data services, cable modem services, as they look to begin to introduce telephony services and other communication services on that plant, they're taking themselves out to the max. They're going well beyond anything they've ever ventured before in delivering signals. And in order to deliver a decent signal with high-speed data, for example, you have to have a tight system. You know, all the things have to be tight, much tighter than what they had to in the past because of production to go down there and evaluate it. But I wouldn't expect because of the additional things they're planning on doing with that system.
Yeah, except they're not going to do that for years. I mean, they're using an old system, at least in
upgrade and work harder to maintain their systems, they wouldn't be able to deploy these advanced network systems. I was Chad said, I think you'll see, it's a growing industry, and the industry is continually going through these growing pains.
We're going to have time for one more question for John.
Yes, and I know you want to break this, so it's a quick one. Where does your authority stop in regards to a transmission site that's, let's say, in Jersey, specifically, Time Warner Cable, submission from the Spanish-speaking channel?
You may have, either during lunch or when you see him wandering around aimlessly in the hallways. With that, we will break for lunch. Lunch is 2 doors down on the right. I do want to mention 2 other things before we do break.
That's what I got to find out. That's spooky, right? Yeah. When a lawyer shows up.
Watch that door that it doesn't slam on you. We'll start this up a little later. A 4 kW Onia generator. It gives us all the electric power we need.
What got you interested in engineering?
Huh?
What got you interested in engineering?
In the service, I was communications and wiring, and I liked that. And then I got out and when I was young in the building, I went to work for a telephone company contract. They had experience in running telephone poles. And there I got into the need, started off with an installer. Been here ever since.
When did you come to work for the commission?
I joined the commission in October of 1980.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
What is his name? He gave me his name. Who was here last year?
Joe Biniak?
Yeah, where's he doing now?
Same thing.
Same thing.
We work together.
Let them know where they're going with their companies within the communities that they serve. And we're pleased that Cablevision took us up on the offer to present here today. Tim Rooney will kick it off for Cablevision. He is the Area Vice President for Government and Public Affairs for Cablevision's operation that covers Westchester County. And I'll let Tim introduce the rest of the group that is with him. And we expect to hear from them today with respect to what they're doing as they bring their New York operations together. Hopefully everybody in this room is aware that right now Cablevision is pretty much focused on their operations in New York and surrounding areas in New Jersey and Connecticut as being the primary focus of their company now. And we think that they're going to be introducing a lot of new services, a lot of new products within the communities that they serve in New York. And we at the PSC are kind of excited to watch their operation unfold as they have pretty much a uniform New York State focus. With that, let me introduce Tim.
Thank you, Chad. I'd like to thank the PSC for giving us the invitation to speak here today. I see some familiar faces out there, and I look forward in the coming months to getting to know a lot more of you in the Cablevision family, as well as the Media One family that we'll be bringing into the Cablevision system shortly. What we've decided to do today is sort of give you a general overview of where the company is today and where we're going technology-wise. We'll see a technology presentation.
in this industry than there has been at any one time in our history.
Johnson cuts left, now fires a three.
Sometimes I even scare myself.
On the back of the
All celebrating its grand reopening.
Cablevision, the company that holds a long-term lease on Radio City and put up the money for its restoration.
Number one long-distance provider AT&T and Cablevision have agreed to hook up in a pretty big marketing deal.
Independent, good, Hollywood, bad.
Just now, my friends from across the river in Rockland County from Clarkstown said, oh, we had...
The user interface home screens.
Would you say to your customer?
I have a question. With all your advanced analog and all your fiber network and all your digital advance and your 110 channels and all your power to learn, when are you going to face your medievalism that you have no system-wide public access in 20 of the biggest municipalities in Westchester?
Thank you, Glendora, for that question. This is something that has come up since we have taken over TCI, and we are planning to have regional meetings on this topic because...
The best cameras possible within your budget, because as the technical term goes,
Folks, I want you to see that we are videotaping at 3. We had to get up at 3 a.m. today, Wednesday, Flag Day, to videotape. But you are in the Glendora Pro Se and Public Access Museum. And the red, white, and blue is exactly for that. Cheers for the red, white, and blue to preserve America for what America was meant to be. Well, folks, what did you think of the Public Service Commission? And what did you think of their advice to municipalities how to renew a Cablevision franchise? It must have been very, very helpful to the municipal officials. When at the end of the conference, which was around 3 o'clock, I had one question: what is the Public Service Commission going to do about no public, system-wide public access in 20 municipalities in Westchester? Their answer was bad. It was given by Steve Shea, and they said that by the franchises, Cablevision had a right to do that. They ignore their own law. No municipality and no cable TV operator, and nor the commission itself, can limit and prohibit public access. And when you take public access off of system-wide Cablevision, and you deny 20 municipalities system-wide public access, 160 public access producers. That's not limiting and prohibiting public access. So I think the Public Service Commission has to be sued along with the rest of them. We've got to find out a way to mobilize these municipalities who were snickered during the franchise negotiations and trusted TCI, that lousy company, John C. Malone, which no longer exists. It got its due finish. Who trusted TCI, and then they pulled a fast one on them. So I think on that grounds alone that the municipalities can sue Cablevision, that they persist in this terrible violation of free speech. So I shouted pro-cable. The New York State Commission Public Service Commission is pro-cable, okay, and anti-public access. Next question I asked the Public Service Commission at the end was, what is the Public Service Commission going to do about the Cablevision Public Access Kit? The answer was very vague, but behind the scenes I found this out by talking to John Figliosi, that Cablevision is rewriting the Public Access Kit. That is a tremendous victory. It's very difficult for Cablevision to admit that they are wrong. And they have done that. They have said they have made several mistakes, and they have also admitted they were wrong and that they are going to rewrite the Public Access Kit. A rumor is that they're going to back off on the July 1st date. I have no official confirmation of that. Hilgartner and Goldberg, as yet, have not filed their lawsuit. Our lawsuit in the United States District Court, Eastern District of Missouri, is doing very well. We made this crooked lawyer of Cablevision's, for whom Glendora has been an annuity for 7 years. His name is Robert Callaghy. You've heard me talk about him ad infinitum. And the crooked law firm, Satterley, Stevens, Burke & Burke, a liar for hire is what they are. His screwball garbage that he put out to the Eastern District of Missouri, they had to hire a lawyer in St. Louis, Missouri. But you can see that Callaghy wrote it, and he tried to get rid of the lawsuit in Missouri on the basis of that Glendora stands up for Americans' rights. Glendora is something like 60 litigations that go straight to the heart of America, and he tries to prejudice the judge against Glendora. Well, Glendora isn't the only defendant, the only plaintiff. Glendora is just one of the plaintiffs. There are 9 plaintiffs. Oh, it's a whole screwball motion, and so the plaintiffs made a motion, counter motion, for 1, summary judgment, because Cablevision did not deal with the charges that we made against them. Violation of free speech, 531E, no prohibiting and limiting of public access, no showing the shareholders the books, never touch one of those charges. So therefore, if they didn't dispute the facts, then there is no dispute of facts, and therefore we are entitled to a summary judgment by law. Also, this omnibus motion asks for sanctions on Callaghy and on this new St. Louis lawyer, Kuhlman, and it also sanctions of $2,300,000, and sanctions on Cablevision defendants. That would be James Dolan, Charles Dolan, Cablevision, Charles Former, and inter alia, or et al., I should say. And 3, it asks for a restraining order on them, enjoining them from filing any more frivolous and fraudulent papers to the court, and it asks for a denial of the bogus motion to dismiss. And so that went out last week, since I've talked to you before, to St. Louis. I'd like to point out that that young man who was introducing the Cablevision commercial, all in very bad taste, all boring, ad infinitum, boasting of